Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Parama Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Gurubhyo Namaha. So today we're going to continue on with part 3 of Hari Bhakti Vilas. We are in the first Vilas, and I'm going to show you where we're up to. So text 82 and 83. So because I'm showing the Sanskrit on the screen, I guess there's no real need for us to chant it. This will probably make things go a little faster. So we were talking before about the qualifications of a guru, qualifications of a teacher, spiritual teacher, and now we're talking about the qualifications of a student, a shishya or a disciple. So we already had some qualifications listed in the previous class, but continuing on, and I think these also come from Mantra Muktavali, I'm not sure. No, these are from Kumuda Piranha, Vyasa Gita, and it says Visheshata Sri Guru Seva Vidhi. These are not actually qualifications. These are things that the student should do for the guru. Things the student should do for the guru. Okay, so here it says the disciple should not go anywhere without first taking permission from his spiritual master. That's interesting. So, I'm not exactly sure what that means in present context. But anyway, in those days, I guess the students were living in the house of the guru with the family of the guru, and they would not go anywhere without being told by the gurus to go there. Naturally, the brahmacharis who were living in the Gurukula in those days, they used to go begging for alms to each and every house, and they would get uncooked food, uncooked rice and uncooked vegetables and things as alms normally. In some cases, of course, begging for alms, people give money, but normally the system still in South India is people go around, it's called, in North India they call it madhukari, being like a bee, taking a little bit from each place. In South India, it's called unchavriti. Unchavriti means that you go and they give uncooked, usually a cup of rice, usually a cup of uncooked rice. And when Vedanta Deshika used to do it, even though he was a householder, he would go around, and people who wanted to give him something extra, they would put some coins in the rice, hide some coins in the rice, because it was very difficult to give him. You couldn't give him actually money. Directly, he wouldn't accept it. So there's a story that some people put some gold coins in the rice, and later on, when he gave the rice to his wife to clean before cooking it, she found the gold coins, but they were so poor that she had never actually seen money, and so she asked him. She took these gold coins to her husband and said, "What are these?" And he said, "Oh, these are cockroaches. These are insects. Throw them away. They're dirty things." So this was his attitude towards money. So, which is very interesting. He wrote, he was actually sent a letter by a friend of his who was another great pundit, but it was an Advaitin. I'm not sure if they were friends, but there was an Advaitin, the name doesn't come to me, Vidyaranya, I believe, who was Swami Vidyaranya, who was an Advaitin, who was living in the northern Karnataka, in the kingdom of the Vijayanagara Empire, in the capital city called Hampi, which you can still go and see, that the ruined city today. So the king liked to keep different pundits. This is the thing the Maharajas in India used to keep, court pundits. And so they could ask, any question that came up, they could ask the pundit, and the pundit would know all the answers because he'd studied all the scriptures. So this king of the Vijayanagara Empire, Krishnadeva had an Advaitic Pandit, and he had a Madhva Pandit, Dvaita Pandit, and he wanted a Vishishta Dvaita Pandit. So Vidyaranya to Vedanta Deshika, why don't you come? You're a Sri Vaishnava, why don't you come? We've got a Madhvas, we've got Smartas here. We need a Sri Vaishnava Pandit. Why don't you come? And then you'll be looked after by the king. You are so poor. The king will provide everything for you. You live in the lap of luxury, and all you have to do is answer a few questions every once in a while that the king poses. So Vedanta Deshika wrote a stotram called Vairagya Panchakam, five verses on Vairagya, or renunciation, dispassion, in reply. And he said he preferred to remain a beggar in Sri Rangam than to go and live a rich man's life in Hampi, because he would be also underneath he would have to serve the king. And the idea is a Sri Vaishnava, or a Vaishnava in general, Vaishnavas in general, we don't serve anybody except for the Supreme Lord. So we see the same. We see a very similar thing in Lord Chaitanya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life, that that King Pratiparudra of Orissa, at that time, it had another name. Anyway, I forget the name. But the king of that area of Orissa, of Puri, became a great devotee, became a Gaudiya Vaishnava, a great devotee of Sri Chaitanya, and he wanted to meet the Lord, but the Lord didn't want to meet him because he was a king. The king is considered a materialistic person. Even though the kings of ancient times were called Raja Rishis, they were kings, but also considered to be saintly, right? Still, because they have to do with commerce and they have to do with administration and management of the kingdom and everything like that, they're considered to be materialistic because they're tinged with some materialism, because they're in that position of managing or ruling over the kingdom. So anyway, interesting here, the shishya, getting back to it, the shishya has to take permission from the spiritual master if he goes anywhere. He should not engage in activities. He should always engage in activities that are pleasing to the spiritual master, obviously, right? He should never point his feet towards the spiritual master. Pointing your feet at somebody is considered to be very, it's a bit of an insult in Vedic culture. I remember one time I was living, I was at a particular installation ceremony with M.R. Sampat Kumar Bhattacharya, and there were like 25, a lot of different pundits, and they were all given different rooms in a dharamshala, and I got to stay in the same room with the head pundit, chief pundit, M.R. Sampat Kumar Bhatta, and he said to me, "Why don't you stay with me in the same room? Then I can, teach you different things." And I can remember very vividly sitting on the floor, and because there's no furniture in these dharamshala rooms, and sitting on the floor and pointing my feet, getting sick of having cross-legged, and pointing my feet out towards him. And he immediately said, "No, you shouldn't do this. You should never point your feet at anybody. The feet are the lowest part of your body, and you should never. You walk in the dust and the dirt with those feet, and therefore you shouldn't point your feet towards other persons. So this is considered to be an offense. Pointing your feet at the guru." Pointing your feet at the guru, turning your back on the guru, all these different these things. Just the guru is considered to be equal in honor to God. You have to honor him in that way. So we don't turn our back on the deity. We don't point our feet to the deity. So there's a lot of these etiquettes that we perform in deity worship, that we follow in deity worship, that we also perform, or we also accept these etiquettes in regard to the spiritual master. He should not yawn. Yawning also considered to be that. Laugh loudly. So I guess some laugh loudly. Speak loudly. Speak loudly. Some people, when they want to speak to the spiritual master, even today, if you see amongst Sri Vaishnavas, people will cover their mouth like this, so they don't accidentally spray spit on the guru when they're speaking, and they'll come up very close to the guru and they'll speak in a low voice, and they'll say, "Adiyen requests that you please start the class, Swami," like that. they'll say Adiyan, I am your servant, right? Dasan Swami, they'll say something like this, that you're my master and I'm your servant. Swami, can you please answer this question for me? They'll speak like that with their hand in front of their face in a low tone. So not speak loudly. Cover his throat with a cloth. Not exactly sure what this means. Cover the throat with a cloth. Yeah, I think here in the second sloka here it says Kanta Pravarnam Tata. Not sure exactly what that means. Or snap his fingers before the spiritual master. Sometimes we snap our fingers and it means we want something done immediately, right? So snapping the fingers normally, I don't know, may mean something else also in Vedic culture. We don't know exactly. Okay, so continuing on anyway. And also, there's another sloka here, verse text 84. The disciple should offer the same respect and service to the spiritual master's children, wife, and friends as he does to the spiritual master. Now, obviously, again, we can see from this sloka that the spiritual master here, in all of these old quotes from the old shastras, is considered to be a grihastha. Because if he was a brahmachari, vanaprastha, or a sannyasi, he wouldn't be with his wife. He wouldn't have a wife. It's possible for vanaprastha also to be with his wife in the forest. She can still serve him in many ways when he's in the forest. But mostly the idea here is that the spiritual master is a grihastha, because of what we discussed before, that the student will bring wood for the spiritual master to use in his daily yagya, in his daily fire sacrifices, and we know that the sannyasis, they don't do fire sacrifices because they're forbidden to do that. So let's continue on. Okay, verses 85 to 87. A disciple should not massage let's see, bathe, eat. Oh, just to finish off that point there. Okay, so the spiritual master's wife, is the Guru Patni, the spiritual master's children, and his friends, which probably would mean his god brothers, the spiritual master's god brothers. They should all be given the same respect as the spiritual master and service by the student. So the spiritual master should not massage. A disciple should not massage, bathe, eat the remnants of food, or wash the feet of the spiritual master's son. Okay, so this is a sort of an interesting comment here. Apparently, the student should not massage, bathe, eat the remnants, or wash the feet of the spiritual master's son. Okay, I'm not exactly sure why that is. If the wife of the spiritual master is from the same varna, so we discussed this before, she should be respected the same as the spiritual master. If not, she should be respected simply by standing up from one's seat and offering some kind of greeting. Okay, so here there's a distinction made. Normally the spiritual master, as we know, is coming from the Brahmin caste, or the Brahmin section of society, and therefore a Brahmin, the idea we discussed about anuloma and pratiloma marriages, it's possible for a person in a higher caste to marry a person in a lower caste. But it's not usually recommended that it's not recommended at all that a person in a lower caste marry a person in a higher caste. So if there's a man in the Brahmin caste, he could have a wife also in the Brahmin caste, or a Kshatriya, or a Vaishya, or a Shudra. A Kshatriya man could have a wife who's a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or a Shudra. A Vaishya man could have a Vaishya wife or a Shudra wife, and a Shudra should only marry a Shudra usually. Otherwise, there'll be pratiloma, So instead of descending, there'll be ascending, an ascending problem in the caste, mixing of castes in the marriages. Okay, so here it's distinctly said that if the student should respect the wife of the spiritual master if she's the same varna. So, for instance, if he's a Brahmin and she's a Brahmin, if he's a Kshatriya and she's a Kshatriya, if he's a Vaishya and she's a Vaishya, if he's a Sudra and she's a Sudra. Otherwise, if she's not, then she's not the same varna, then he simply respects her by standing up. You know, we respect people. Sometimes we respect people. Usually, when somebody comes and you're sitting down, you should stand up and just to respectfully greet them. Right. So that's the method of greeting them and offering some sort of greeting, some nice greeting. The disciple should not massage with oil the body of the spiritual master's wife. Well, this goes without saying that if there's a male student he shouldn't massage the body of the spiritual master's wife. That will be inappropriate. Apply sandalwood paste on her or comb her hair. So in other words, help her with cosmetics and things like that. Now, if the student were a lady, that might be appropriate. So I think this particularly we're talking here about male students of a male spiritual master and their etiquette towards the wife of their guru. Now, it might be different also if there are female students of a male spiritual master. They also couldn't massage their guru, who's a male. So these sort of interactions between males and females are just pretty obvious to most people, but they need to be spelled out here because sometimes people think, oh, it's mentioned in the scriptures that the student should massage the spiritual master. But what if the spiritual master is a sannyasi and the student's a lady? So obviously there are some etiquettes to be followed in that situation, some social etiquettes. Okay. So continuing on, we have a quotation here from Devi Agama. So it's an Agama, that is perhaps a Shakta Agama but Lord Shiva says this, the disciple should never step on the spiritual master's bed. Okay, so of course, normally in those days, everybody would sleep on the floor. Even today, many people sleep on the floor. They put a mat out and they put their bedding out and they sleep on top of that. But there are people who, of course, in modern India and modern days, some people do sleep on beds, actual beds, either charpoys, which are rope beds, with a crisscross rope, or some sort of flat platform bed, with or without a mattress. And so, but in any case, the spiritual master's bed, his asana, his shoes, his footstool. I'm not sure why he would have a footstool, but maybe some spiritual master has a stool that he puts his feet on. His bath water or his shadow, like that. So, for instance, when we wash the feet of the spiritual master, this is called tirtha, in the same way as charanamrita. Charana means feet, and amrita means nectar. So nectar of the feet, charanamrita. When we bathe the deity, we also can do this for the spiritual master, and we can take some of that water, sprinkle on our heads, or even take it as achamana, sip it like that. So that is called, in Sri Vaishnavism, that's called Sri Pada Tirtha. So if somebody says to you, a lot of times when there'll be a gathering of people, they'll come around with 2 charanamritas. So the first thing they'll come around is they'll give you the tirtha, what they call tirtha, which is from the deities, from worshiping the deity. And second, they'll come around with some charanamrita, which is from worship of the guru, either from the guru's deity or from washing the guru's feet, like that. And then normally the etiquette is that this second tirtha, they'll say this is Sripada Tirtha, and then they will only usually offer that to a disciple, to a direct disciple of that guru. So, for instance, if you went to a mutt and they were offering you Sripada Tirtha of Vedanta Deshika, then you could take it. Everybody could probably take it like that. But if you go to a Tirumalage, a guru's house, where there's a particular guru there, and mostly you would see that the guru's deities are there, and they would have some sort of function, either a lecture or a puja or something like that, and they would worship the deities, and they would come around and give you tirtha, first from the deities. Secondly, they would go around and all the invited people would be offered the Sripada Tirtha if they're disciples, but if the persons who were there were not direct disciples, those people would not get the second Charanamrita. Okay, so it's just these are etiquettes that the disciple shouldn't disrespect these things: the footstool, the bathwater, the shadow, by standing on the shadow, the asana, the seat of the guru, his shoes, or his bed. So continuing on, the disciple should not worship or glorify someone else in front of the spiritual master. So this one, the idea is that when you're in front of the spiritual master, you should glorify him, and not necessarily glorify other persons. Of course, the guru is not going to be too offended by this. If you are glorifying somebody else who is a great Vaishnava, then the guru is not going to be offended by this. But if you're glorifying some other materialistic person in the front of your guru, it just shows an improper mentality that you have, So he should not think himself to be as good as his spiritual master. This is obvious. The disciple should always remain humble. Give initiation, explain literatures, or pose himself as a master in front of his spiritual master. So unless the guru asks you to do that, to do any of these things, you should not do these things, like give your initiation yourself, or explain certain literatures, explain the scriptures in front, or pose yourself as a master in front of the spiritual master. And the guru sometimes will ask people, his senior disciples, to teach and explain different literatures, or to perform different rituals and things. But you should always wait for the instruction of the spiritual master to do that. So continuing on, we have a couple of slokas here spoken by Narada Muni, who himself is a great spiritual master. When a disciple sees his spiritual master, he should fold his hands, meaning the Anjali or the Pranam Mudra, so in prayer style in front of the chest, and then offer obeisances to him, falling flat on the ground like a stick. So I think it's the word here given is pranamed, means offer obeisances. Dandavad bhumau, on the ground, dandavad. Kritanjali means put your hands together in the Anjali Mudra, prayer mudra, and then dandavad means like a stick, very straight like this. Now, some people say, of course, the lady should do only Panchanga Pranam, whereas Dandavad is also called Astanga Pranam. There are 8 parts of the body, Astanga, 8 parts of the body which one pays obeisances with. And we could go through those 8, but offhand, it's not coming to me exactly what those 8 are. But they include mind, body, and words. They include some other things which are more subtle than just 8 parts of the body. The ladies are usually seen to do 5, and to simply bow down and touch the head to the ground without going completely flat like a stick. But of course, there are some examples of ladies also doing the Dandavat Pranam, and sometimes we see, even in India today, there's a very famous sculpture of a man and a lady offering full pranams in the Sri Rangam temple, which I can show people, which is proof that ladies can actually do this. Some people say that the ladies shouldn't do this because it offends the earth touching their breast to the earth offends Mother Earth in some way. So I don't know exactly that quote, but I've heard people say that. It may come from some Purana or something like that. It may be some local tradition. Also, we see there's a tradition of rolling dandavats. There's a thing called rolling dandavats where people offer obeisances like a stick, and then they roll and they circumambulate the deity, or they circumambulate some holy thing while they're on the ground, spread out like a stick. So women also do that in South India too. Not so much in North India. So mostly you won't see any women doing Dandavat Pranams in North India mostly. So text 92 is a quotation from Manusmriti or Manusamhita, right, which of course is a Dharma Shastra, which has a lot to do with the Varnashram society and how it was run in the medieval times. So without offering words of glorification, the disciple or student should never utter the name of his spiritual master, even in his absence. So even when you're not around your spiritual master, when you mention his name, you have to you would always say His Holiness or His Divine Grace, or you would always say end his name with the word Vishnupada. It's very much even this is in some other religions, they do things like this. When the Muslims talk about Muhammad, they say praise be upon him. You know, whenever they say his name, they say praise be upon him, or God's blessing be upon him, or something like that. So they're always, when you mention the name of the spiritual master, you should. This is a custom that to be very respectful, you should always not simply. I can remember we had one person who was a god brother of mine who was a spiritual master here in Hawaii, and I used to refer to him by his name because he was my god brother, and some of his disciples got very, very upset. Well, no, you shouldn't call him that. You know, you should call him by his full title. You know, his full title such and such Mahashaya or such and such Paramahamsa or whatever. So people sometimes the students get a little bit upset if somebody if you relate to a person in a different way, if you're their god brother or like that, and you refer to them simply by their name. So the name of the spiritual master, normally we say Om Vishnupad such and such Swami or such and such Dasa, Adhikari or whatever. And he should not imitate the spiritual master's style of walking, speaking, or performing other activities. Okay, so there's a very famous statement in Mahabharata which says, Mahajano yena gata sapantaha. The pantaha, the path of the spiritual master, the path of the Mahajans, the great persons, Mahajano yena gata, we should go according to the path of the great people. So we should follow them in the same way. We should try to take their example in our lives, but it doesn't mean imitation. So there's a difference between following the footsteps of someone or imitating them. So simply imitation is not good, although imitation by some people is considered to be flattery or is considered to be praise. That still we should try to imitate him in his understanding of the scriptures, in his knowledge of the scriptures, in all good spiritual ways. But we shouldn't try to imitate in some very minor way, which is not some materialistic way, where if the guru has some specific way of walking or speaking or performing other activities. Sometimes you see I've seen that there's a guru who used to always start speaking and always say so in the beginning of when he would start speaking, and then his disciples, a lot of them would also imitate that and start the lecture by saying so, or they would try to imitate the way he played harmonium or the way he sang or something like that. So this is not such a bad thing, actually. if it's done respectfully. But the idea is that it shouldn't be done in a way which is disrespectful of the guru. Okay. So continuing on, we have I'm not sure if this may also still be from Manusmriti, the next sloka 93, first Vilasa. If the disciple sees a spiritual master of his spiritual master, who is the spiritual master of his spiritual master? So we call our teacher our guru. His teacher we call the Param Guru. The teacher of the Param Guru we call the Parat Guru. And the teacher of the Parat Guru we call the Parameshti Guru, the supreme most. So we have the Guru, Param Guru, Parat Guru, and Parameshti Guru. Okay. So beyond that, beyond 4 gurus back, probably that person is not alive. So it's possible though, just like we have in our families, we might have a mother, a grandmother, or a father, a grandfather, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather. It's possible to have these sort of people. So the guru is like the father, the Param Guru is like the grandfather, the Para Guru is like the great-grandfather, and the great-great-grandfather is the Parameshti Guru, like that. So if the disciple sees a person like that, who is the guru, or the god brother, or the god sister of his guru, right? He should respect him just the same as he does his guru, his own spiritual master, right? So this is important to know etiquette. It's the etiquette that a student should respect the previous generation of Vaishnavas in the same way that they give respect to their own teacher. A disciple should not offer respect or obeisances to his father and other elderly people without the approval of his spiritual master. So it's very normal, especially in Indian culture, the children in the family will actually offer their respects and obeisances to their parents. At least it used to be like that. So, but here it's saying you should first of all get permission from the spiritual master before you offer obeisances or respects even to other members of your family who are senior to you, which is very interesting because we understand that a dvija, a person who has approached a spiritual master and has taken initiation, is considered to be a dvija. He's taken birth one time from his mother and his father. His father and mother gave him this material body, and he's taken birth one time. The word ja means janma or birth. So he's taken one birth, and then a second birth he's taken is a spiritual birth where the guru has either given Upanayanam or given Vaishnav Diksha to him, and so he has become born again, as the Christians would say. He's born again, and he is therefore called twice born. Dvija. Dvi means two, and ja means birth. So the person who is dvija, who is the most important parent to him? The most important parents to the person who is dvija is the guru is considered the father, and the mother is considered the Vedas or the scriptures, right? So this is in our second birth we get parents also. The parents are the guru, is the father, and the scriptures are the Vedas or the scriptures are our mother, like that. So those spiritual parents are more important than the material parents who simply gave us our material body. That's the point being explained here. So we should always think of respecting the spiritual teacher before respecting the material parents. But the parents are also considered to be they have to be respected. In the Vedas it's stated, Matri Devo Bhava, Pitri Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Atiti Devo Bhava. So Matri Devo Bhava means mother is to be respected like God, right? Pitri Devo Bhava, and mother is the first guru because she teaches us everything in the beginning. So Matri Devo Bhava, Pitri Devo Bhava, father is to be respected like God. Acharya Devo Bhava, the Acharya or the guru is considered to be or respected like God. and the atiti, the person who comes unannounced, the unannounced guest who comes without telling you, without calling, without texting, who shows up and is unannounced. That other guests also, I guess, but especially this guest even, is considered also has to be given respect like God. So this gives you an idea in the Vedas how much we respect the persons who are our elders and who are guests, and even the acharya. So all on the same level that they have to be off the obeisances. But here, between them, the acharya is more important because he's the spiritual father. So in Narada Pancharatra, which is one of the Pancharatra agamas, which deals with ritual and Vaishnava rituals and Vaishnava deity worship and how to worship Lord Vishnu. These are the texts that give us doctrines and practical applications of how to worship Lord Vishnu. So one is called Narada Pancharatra. In that there are a couple of verses here which are given next. A disciple should not utter the name of the spiritual master in a negligent manner. So that was also described before, that we have to always praise him or say it in a very respectful way, the name of the Guru. So he should fold his hands and with self-controlled heart utter the sacred name of his spiritual master, beginning with Om and Vishnupad. So Om Vishnupad, and then Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya, if that person is a sannyasi, right, etc., etc. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, or Om Vishnupad, Periyanamba Swami Gal, or Om Vishnupad, whoever the Guru is, Om Vishnupad Chinnajiya Swamiji, or Om Vishnupad, some other person's name, whoever the spiritual master is. So this is a very, very sort of formal way of addressing the spiritual master, but it's a very respectful way. So we should always be respectful when mentioning the name of the spiritual master. Okay, so text 96. A disciple should never, out of illusion, give orders to the spiritual master or transgress his orders. So there's two things here in this first sentence. We don't break his orders. If he tells us to do something, we should do it, right? And also, we should not, therefore, also tell him what to do. We should not propose our own when the Guru tells you to do something. Instead of proposing something, opposite to that or something different than that, you should simply follow it like that. So don't give orders to the Guru, don't transgress his orders. One should not eat anything without first offering it to the Guru or the spiritual master. Yeah. So this is what the boys used to do. They used to go and beg alms, beg food from different households, and the brahmacharis, they would come back to the house of the Guru, and that would be either cooked if it was uncooked, or if it was cooked, normally it wouldn't be cooked, because a Brahmin normally doesn't accept food from everywhere and anywhere that has been cooked. But let's say there was something that was cooked, right? That if cooked foodstuffs were given to a servant, he would always offer it back to his master first, to the spiritual master. These rules must be followed by the disciple after he takes initiation. Okay, so remember we were talking about we're going to talk also very shortly about examining. I think we already talked about examining the Guru and the disciple, examine each other as to their qualities before they give initiation. So before a person takes initiation from a Guru, or before a Guru gives initiation to a student, that student doesn't strictly have to follow all of these rules, but after initiation, he's supposed to follow all these rules very strictly. That's the point. Because these are all formalities, and initiation marks the formal acceptance of a student by a Guru and the formal acceptance of the Guru by the student. So that's that initiation time is a formality before which and after which there can be slightly different behavior by the Guru and by the student, by the teacher and the student. So elsewhere it's said, and there's a couple of verses here, a disciple should greet his spiritual master whenever he meets him by chance. So let's say you see your guru by chance, you should definitely greet him by offering your obeisances to him. If you're walking in the street and you see the guru is going to the temple or something like that, and you just saw him for the first time or by accident, then obviously, or he's out doing something and you see him, obviously you should approach him and offer your respects to him like that. He should not sit on an asana or lie down in front of the spiritual master. So the spiritual master sits on an asana, and the student should sit lower. And in fact, it's the etiquette that anybody who's speaking the Shastras is considered to be in the place of Vedavyas, speaking on behalf of Vedavyas. So that's why the seat of the guru is called the Vyas asana. It is the asana or the seat of Vyas. So it's not really the personal asana of that guru. He's when he sits there, he speaks from the scripture. When somebody else sits there, they speak from the scripture. So it's a seat of Vyas, and therefore anyone who sits there. So there are different things. There might be a personal seat that your teacher might have a personal seat. That's one thing that shouldn't be disrespected by the student. But there is in temples, there is especially if you look in Vrindavan, they do have these things called Vyasasanas, which is an asana for the person who's going to give a class or explain the scriptures. And normally it has like a lectern, has an area where the scripture can be placed higher than the speaker, and then below the speaker there's a place with some where for the speaker to sit, either on wood or on a pillow or something like that. And the speaker is sitting there, and that speaker speaks on behalf of Vyas. So if you look in the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust copies of printings of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a picture in the front, and you'll see the scene of the Bhagavatam being spoken by Shukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit. Parikshit, of course, means inquirer. The word Parikshit means inquirer. So he's the main inquirer. He's the one who wants to hear the story of the Bhagavatam. And Shukadeva Goswami is repeating. So that's why he's called Shukadev. Shuka means parrot. A parrot repeats perfectly what the parrot hears. So Shukadev is repeating the message of the Bhagavatam. It's being heard by the inquirer, Parikshit, right? And then there are many other people in the audience who are also listening to the scriptures being repeated by Shukadev to Parikshit. So it's very interesting. If you look at that picture, it's very nicely drawn. So Shukadev, as the guru, as the teacher, in sitting on the Vyasasana, sitting on the asana of Vyas, preaching from the scriptures, taking the position of being like Vyas and preaching the scriptures to Parikshit. Parikshit is on a slightly lower asana, listening, and then everybody else is on a lower asana than that, including Narada Muni and actually Vedavyas, the father of Sukadev. So Vedavyas is not only the father, but he's the guru of Shukadev Goswami, and Narada Muni is the guru of Vedavyas, and yet they're sitting lower than Shukadev. So they're the guru and the param guru of Shukadev, and yet they're sitting lower than Shukadev. Is this correct? Yes, it is correct, because when Shukadev sits on the asana, the Vyas asana, he is in the position of Vyas. When he's in the position of Vyas, speaking from the scriptures, then everybody else has to sit lower than him. So this is actually the correct etiquette. So if it's possible that the guru might ask some disciple to sit and to speak on the scriptures, in which case even the guru might sit down and listen to the words of his own disciple. So it's possible. We can see this in this painting depicted very nicely. But normally, of course, the guru sits on a higher seat than a lower seat. I remember we went to Sri Rangam many years ago to film. We were filming around India for Lord Chaitanya's 500th anniversary, and we wanted to film a scene of Lord Chaitanya preaching to the other boys in Gurukula, in his Gurukula in Navadvip. So we took some Gurukul boys, and we had one boy standing and preaching and the other boys sitting, right? And we put a mat out for the boys to sit on. And the Gurukul teacher in Sri Rangam objected, and he said, no, even this straw mat, you should be taken away. The children have to sit until they become teachers, until they graduate from the Gurukul. They cannot sit on a mat. They have to sit on the bare floor. They have to sit right down there on the bare floor, even as somebody else, the guru is sitting on a small straw mat. They have to sit on the ground. So that's the etiquette that they still follow even today in South India. So that's the idea, that you should not sit on an asana in front of the guru. In other words, at least if you're sitting on an asana, his asana should be higher than yours, just to show that he's the teacher. Well, and naturally, lying down is a very casual way of sitting, so you shouldn't lie down in front of the spiritual master also. All nice food and drink should first be offered to one's spiritual master. Well, we discussed this before. Whatever foodstuffs are received should be offered to the guru before the student takes the remnants of it. The student can accept the spiritual master's remnants. So normally remnants are not to be eaten because they're considered uchista. So for instance, in South India, if they put the leaf in front of you and they put food on the leaf and you eat from the leaf and you eat from a plate, then whatever's left over, you've touched it with your hand and you've touched it to your mouth, and it's considered to be unclean, and normally they'll give this to animals afterwards if there's any leftover things. This will be given to animals or just thrown into in the trash heap. Okay. However, accepting the remnants of the food of the spiritual master is considered to be a great blessing for disciples, so they can take the remnants of the spiritual master, the disciples, like that. And again, normally, if the remnants of the spiritual master are being given out, they're given mainly to initiated disciples and not to others, which is fine. So in that case, the remnants are not considered to be unclean, but they're considered. Ramanuja himself, in his lifetime, there was one lower caste Vaishnava who was a very great devotee of Lord Maharaja, and he invited him to come to his house and take food simply so that he could get some of the remnants of his food, because he considered him to be a great person. And because of caste barriers, he couldn't take initiation from that person because he was of a lower caste, Ramanuja being a Brahmin and this person being a Shudra. So although he was a disciple of Yamunacharya, but he was born in the Shudra caste. So although he was a great devotee, Ramanuja didn't go against the caste ideas at the time, where a Brahmin could not take initiation from a Shudra. So he didn't go against that rule, but at least he thought he could take some of the remnants of his food stuff, which is considered holy and a blessing on the student. So he considered that person to be one of his gurus, a Shiksha guru, obviously not a Diksha guru. So verse 99, in Vishnu Shmriti, so we just heard from Manu Shmriti, now we're hearing from another Shmriti, one of these Dharma Shastras called Vishnu Shmriti. A disciple should never act in a way which displeases his spiritual master. Sometimes that can be a little bit difficult for some people because they don't exactly know what the spiritual master wants. But hopefully, normally the spiritual master will be very clear, and he will be very, he will make his will, what he wants, what pleases him, very clear to the disciple. There is, of course, even if he's chastised by him or put into inconvenience. Okay. So some people, some disciples, sometimes they actually do things, silly things, just to get the attention of the guru, or even to get his chastisement. And some people feel the chastisement of the guru is also like a form of blessing. So they specifically do something wrong just to get noticed or chastised by the guru. So should not even if he's chastised by him or put into inconvenience. Okay, so even if it's inconvenient to you, you should always do what the guru tells you to do. Now, there are some examples of where people went against what the guru wanted them to do. The first example is in the scriptures. We know that when Lord Brahma created this universe, actually the universe was created by Vishnu, but it was engineered by Brahma. Afterwards, he engineered the different bodies and he gave different people bodies, and he wanted to populate the universe, so he created the Prajapatis. So he created these 4 Kumaras. There are 4 brahmacharis who were his creation, and he asked many of these Prajapatis to go and to beget children, to get married and beget children and populate the universe. So these 4 bachelors, these 4 brahmacharis, they refused to do that. Even though Brahma is their father and also their guru, the Kumaras refused to get married. So some people say, okay, this is the one thing maybe that the guru, you can refuse the guru because of this story. They say, whatever the guru tells you to do, you have to do it. But if he tells you that you have to get married, if you want to stay a brahmachari, or if you want to take sannyas or something like that, the guru shouldn't interfere in that because of this story. The other example would be given in the life of Ramanuja, when one of his gurus told him, do not tell other people the secret mantra Om Namo Narayana. The guru told him, if anybody who chants or worships with this mantra Om Namo Narayana will go to moksha, will go to Vaikuntha, but you should keep it secret and not tell anybody. Like that. So immediately Ramanuja went up on the top of the tower and he told many, many people this mantra indiscriminately. So later his guru said, well, I told you not to do this. I told you that if you do this, you will go to hell. And Ramanuja said, well, if I go to hell, but if everybody else is saved and goes to Vaikuntha and has moksha, then it's good, then it's okay. So then the guru then at that point, even though Ramanuja disobeyed him, embraced Ramanuja and said, yes, actually, when I come to think of it, your selfless attitude, I agree with this point. So the guru actually changed his mind and said, yes, I agree with what you've done. Even though I told you not to do that, you did it. And therefore, I'm pleased with your attitude because you say you're willing to go to hell if everybody else can be saved. So that's very nice. And even Srila Prabhupada talked about this story, told this story, and said, but normally, the normal situation is we don't disobey the order of the guru, but there might be a few exceptions sometimes. So those are 2 exceptions that I can think of. I don't know if anybody can think of any other shastric or traditional reasons why you would disregard the orders of the spiritual master, but they are. So anyway, usually you should not disregard the orders of the spiritual master and the words or act against his wishes. Continuing on, a disciple should work for the pleasure of the spiritual master.
There is a story of Bali Maharaja.
Bali Maharaja, yeah, very good. That's another one. Bali Maharaja, correct. So King Bali was going to give 3 steps of land to Vamandev, but his guru Shukracharya, and the word Shukra means semen or it means seminal. So he was a caste guru. He was coming in a caste by birth lineage, a guru by birth lineage. And so Shukracharya understood that Vamandev was actually Lord Vishnu, an incarnation of Lord Vishnu, and that he would somehow or other trick Bali and take his kingdom back, because Bali was a demon king. And although he is a devotee of Vishnu, but still, like Prahlad Maharaj, they were born in the family, in the Vamsa, or the family of Hiranyakashipu, of the demons. So Shukracharya his guru thought that Vishnu would trick him, or that Vamana would trick him. So he told him don't do this. And then Bali Maharaj disobeyed his guru and offered these 3 steps of land to Vamandev, and Vamandev became Trivikram, became a great, very big avatar, and spanned the whole material world and spiritual world with 2 steps, and his 3rd step he put on Bali's head. to show that Bali was surrendered to him. So that's very good. So yes, if the guru is a materialistic person, if the guru is just a materialistic type guru, like that. But normally, see, here we're specifically talking about Vaishnava gurus. So hopefully Vaishnava gurus, they do want you to serve Vishnu and not to restrict giving things to Vishnu. So Shukracharya is a little bit of a different example here, but he was a guru. He was a guru. Even Ramanuja had started off, his first guru was in Gurukula, was a person who he didn't agree with philosophically, a person called Yadava Prakash. And so he said some things against the teachings of Yadava Prakash, tried to say some things. He give his own opinions of certain teachings that Yadava Prakash he thought were wrong. Finally, he had to leave that Gurukul and had to leave that guru. Later on, after becoming a guru himself, he changed Yadava Prakash into becoming a Vaishnava. Previously, Yadava Prakash was a beta Bhadin. So he had a different type of philosophy. So, yeah, so the disciple should work for the pleasure of the spiritual master with his life and his wealth. If the disciple serves the spiritual master with his mind, body, and speech, he surely attains the ultimate goal of life. Okay, so there's the benediction, if you follow the guru. Okay, so now here, text 101, there might be a difficulty. And so this is going to talk about the difficulty that would arise if the guru and the disciple don't actually test each other. So we're talking about the test that they should, before initiation, before the guru gives initiation, before the student accepts initiation, they should mutually test each other. And so here in Narada Pancharatra it said, if the spiritual master and the disciple do not test each other, and the spiritual master gives initiation, and the disciple accepts it without serving the spiritual master, both of them will have to pass a long period in the hellish condition of life. So that's a warning from Narada Pancharatra. That it's not just a matter of, in the Bhagavad Gita we heard from Lord Krishna, he says, pariprashnena sevaya. So sevaya has to be there, not just pariprashnena, not just asking questions. Pariprashnena means asking questions, but there should also be some seva. The questions have to be asked in a very, in a submissive way. So we should submissively approach the spiritual master, and that way, and render service to him, and offer some service to him, and in that way, that everything will be correct. Otherwise, there might be some difficulty. So, text 102 is Shishya Pratna, the prayer of a disciple. So, from the Vaishnava Tantra, there's a sloka here. After properly serving the spiritual master and pleasing him, a disciple should pray that he award initiation to him as follows. O spiritual master, you are the master of the world. Please deliver me from the threefold miseries of material existence. Please save me, for I am suffering from the poisonous snake bite in the form of time. I surrender unto you. So, Trayasva bho jagannatha guru samsara vanhina dagdam mam kaladashtam cha tamaham sharanam gataha is the mantra to be said. So this is the person can approach a guru, and after testing him and after the guru testing the student, he should chant this mantra. He should say this prayer to the guru and ask him to give him initiation.
Swami, and when we would say it, then we would say it without et, isn't it?
Well, the word the word et in Sanskrit means thus, and et is used in Sanskrit. There are no quotes, So in other languages, we put quote marks around direct speech. In Sanskrit, there's no direct speech. So there's no quotation marks. So what they do, if you want to indicate direct speech, right, you just put the word iti after something, and that means that the rest of it is direct speech. Aham sharanam gataha means tvam. Tvam means you. Aham means I. Sharanam means surrender. Gataha, I go to surrender to you. Yeah. So this whole sloka is direct speech because we have the word iti at the end. So that's very good. Thank you for showing me that. We would say this prayer without the word iti at the end. Correct. So continuing on, thoughtful personalities have instructed that one should approach a spiritual master and take initiation from him for the purpose of worshipping the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva, who is the crown jewel of all worshipable lords. So here, because this second sloka is explaining about the reason for taking initiation or approaching Guru, right, so that you'll be able to properly worship, right, the Lord Vasudeva. Why can't you properly worship the Lord Vasudeva without taking initiation? Because the ritual worship of the Lord involves knowing the mantra to be used in worship of the Lord. So you have to get that from the Guru. So that's the reason why we approach the Guru is we need instruction on how to worship the Lord. Simply, if we mentally speculate on how to worship the Lord, then we can come up with so many ways of worshiping so many things. So people have totem poles and they have all sorts of religions which are all made up. But if we really want to know, according to the scriptures, the proper way to worship the Lord with the proper mantras and the proper rites and everything, the proper way to do it, we have to approach a proper spiritual master and he will initiate us. And after being initiated, we'll be able to do those things properly. So once we have now mentioned Lord Vasudeva, or Vasudeva means Krishna also, the son of Vasudeva, right? And that he is the crest jewel of all, amongst all worshipable lords, right? So then the next part is explaining a little bit about the glories of the Supreme Lord, just to give us a taste of the glories of the Supreme Lord, who we've surrendered to the spiritual master in order to learn how to worship. So here we have from the first canto of the Bhagavatam, 1-2-23, we have a sloka that says, the transcendental personality of Godhead is indirectly associated with the three modes of material nature because everything's created from him, so everything's indirectly related to him, namely passion, goodness, and ignorance. Interesting, passion, goodness, and ignorance. Sattvam, Rajas, and Tamas. In the actual Sanskrit, we get goodness, passion, and ignorance. So it's interesting why Prabhupada put in different order here. Okay. And it's interesting because in the Sanskrit we have sattva, rajas, and tamas, which is normally the way you see it in Sanskrit. In the translation, Prabhupada put passion, goodness, and ignorance. Passion is creation. Goodness is maintenance. Ignorance is destruction. Yeah. So in chronological order, that's the way they come: passion, goodness, and ignorance. Whereas in the sloka, it's given in a more traditional order, but in the translation, he's given it in a chronological order. And just for the material world's creation, maintenance, and destruction, see, so Prabhupada mentions in the next line here, creation, passion is creation, goodness, maintenance, and destruction, ignorance, destruction. So and again, chronological. He accepts the qualitative forms of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Again, Prabhupada in the translation says Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, but in the Sanskrit it says Hari, Virinchi, Hari, Hare. So Hari is Vishnu, Sattvam. Virinchi is Brahma, Rajas. And Hara, Iti, becomes Hareti. So this is Hara. Hara means Shiva, Tamas. So you can see it's interesting. In the Sanskrit, we get Sattvam, Rajas, Tamas, and Hari, Virinchi, Hara. in the translation, Prabhupada put it in different order, chronological order, which is fine. Passion, goodness, and ignorance, which is respectively overseen by Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Very interesting. I didn't notice that until now. Okay. So, of these three, all human beings can derive ultimate benefit. This should be from. This is a spelling mistake. From Vishnu, the form of the quality of goodness, right? So, out of those three, sometimes people who are very ignorant think that in Hinduism we have three main gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. But that's not true. We have one God, and that is Lord Vishnu, or Krishna, and he is the supreme. And these others are simply guna avatars. These are avatars of the modes of material nature, which are, again, indirectly associated with the Supreme Person, Lord Vasudeva. Okay, so continuing on, we have another quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, 1:18:21. Who can be worthy of the name of the Supreme Lord but the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna? Brahmaji collected the water emanating from the nails of his feet, his toenails, in order to award it to Lord Shiva as a worshipful welcome. This very water, the Ganges, or Ganga Devi, is purifying the whole universe, including Lord Shiva. So this is very interesting. This is an argument that I used when I was one time I was in Varanasi, and in Varanasi you have a lot of people who are worshipping Benares. A lot of people worship Lord Shiva because it's very famous there that if you die there, Lord Shiva comes and chants the Rama mantra in your Rama Taraka mantra in your ear. Still, there are many people in India who believe Shiva is supreme. Not so many that think Brahma is supreme, but there's many people who think Shiva is supreme. So they will even point out different episodes. They'll say, well, look, Lord Rama prayed to Shiva Lingam in Rameshwaram. So he prayed to Shiva. So Shiva must be greater than him because he's praying to Shiva. So there's different episodes that in the Shastras where you'll find different leelas where different incarnations of the Lord seem to be less than. I mean, look at the problems that Lord Krishna had with Indra. Indra was raining down rain on him, and everybody was thinking, but somehow or other Krishna came out on top, of course, because he's the supreme. But in the Govardhan Leela situation, but here, many people there are confused. Even that story of Brigham Muni, going to see the different guna avatars, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, to try to figure out who is actually supreme, and finally understanding that Shiva is supreme. So, like this, you meet a lot of people in India, and they'll say, "Oh, we think Shiva is supreme, and why can't you accept Shiva supreme? He's greater than Vishnu." Blah blah blah. So they'll mention so many things. So I don't bother talking to them philosophy and anything like that. I just say something very simple. Look, Lord Vishnu opened up the spiritual world, and the waters of the Ganges flowed down over his feet onto the head of Lord Shiva. So no matter what you say about how great Shiva is, still he's less than Lord Vishnu, because water from Vishnu's feet, here is saying toenails, is going onto the head of Shiva. In India, that immediately people will understand that Shiva has to be a lesser god, right, than Lord Vishnu if the water from Vishnu's feet is coming on Shiva's head. And they're purifying the whole universe, this water off his feet. So there's nothing in the universe that is greater than Lord Vishnu, because the water from Vishnu's feet is coming on the whole universe in the form of the Ganges. So continuing on, another quotation to tell us the greatness of Lord Vishnu or Krishna, Lord Vasudeva was in the first sloka, coming from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 1089:14, and it says here, amazed upon hearing Brigu's account, the sages, freed from all doubts, and were freed from all doubts and became convinced that Vishnu is the greatest Lord. From him come peace and fearlessness. So this is, of course, speaking about the story in the Bhagavatam where Bhrigu Muni goes to the different. He goes first of all to Shiva, and or first of all to Brahma, then to Shiva, then to Vishnu, and insults them in different ways, and finally finds out that Vishnu is supreme because of the way that each person reacts to being insulted. So continuing on, text 107, Padme from Padma Purana in the Vaishaka Mahatmyam. Vaishaka is a name of a month. So there's a Mahatmyam. There's a section in that Purana, Padma Purana, which speaks of the glories of activities in that particular month of Vaishak. And it's a conversation between Yamaraja and Brahman. So this sloka is as follows. In order to bewilder the people of the world, the Vedic literature, since the beginning of creation, have described various personalities as the greatest of all. And yet, the ultimate conclusion of all Vedic literature is that Lord Vishnu is the supreme personality of Godhead and the supreme worshipable personality of all. So it's sort of interesting that we have the Vedic literature. Sometimes we read certain Upanishads or certain sections of the Vedas or different scriptures, and they seem to indicate that there's some other God which is greater than Lord Vishnu, some other personality. But in actual fact, all the Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, by all the Vedas I am to be known. So actually, all the scriptures ultimately explain that Vishnu is supreme, or Lord Krishna is supreme. So here we have, continuing on, text 108 from the Narasimha Purana. This is a very famous verse which is chanted at the end of Vishnu Sahasranama, the 1,000 names of Vishnu, in the Palashruti, or the list of the great fruits that accrue to somebody who chants the 1,000 names of Vishnu. It says, Satyam Satyam Puna Satyam Ukshipya Bhujamuchyate Veda Shastram Param Nasti Nadeva Keshavat Paraha. Okay, it's very, very famous. So, Satyam Satyam Puna Satyam means, Satyam means truth. So, truth, again, I tell you truth, and I hold my hands above my head like this. Uchipyam Bhujamuchyate, right? I tell you that there is no scripture greater than the Vedas, and there is no God greater than Lord Krishna, right? Na devam keshavat paraha. Paraha means supreme. Na deva, there's no God, there's no devata greater than Lord Krishna. This is the truth, and the truth. Now, a lot of times we hear things, but when things in the Vedic scriptures are repeated 3 times, normally it's for emphasis. So if I say something and I say it again and I say it a 3rd time, it means I really mean that this is to be taken as being absolute truth. Verse 109 comes from Padma Purana. You notice that we're getting different scriptures, quotations from all different scriptures here. So in this verse it says, if Krishna is pleased, then an enemy can become a friend. Poison can turn into palatable food, and irreligiosity can become religiosity. However, if Krishna is displeased, then a friend can become an enemy. Palatable food can become poison, and religiosity can become irreligiosity. That's very interesting. So it all depends upon pleasing the Lord, pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and all these things. We saw, for instance, that Prahlad Maharaj was tried to be, his father Hiranyakashipu tried to poison him, and the poison didn't have any effect on him. There's many examples of this where people tried to poison other people, and they were Vaishnavas and they were saved by the Lord, and the poison had no effect. The food was still palatable. When an enemy can become a friend, or irreligiosity can be religiosity. So we normally think of certain things as being friendly palatable, or religious, but those things can be the exact opposite, depending upon whether Krishna is pleased or not pleased. So that's the ultimately we should always remember Lord Krishna and never forget him, that these rules and regulations, that's the rules, ultimate basic rule and regulation of Vaishnavism. And therefore, we might see something in normal scripture, the normal Vanashram scripture, like these Dharma Shastras or Manusmriti or something like that, which may seem to be wrong, but if it's done for the service of Krishna, then it becomes right. And see something that might seem to be right, but if it displeases the Lord, then it's actually wrong. Like, I mean, Lord Krishna pointed this out on the famous one is, of course, on the Battle of Kurukshetra. Arjuna was thinking that it's irreligious to kill all his friends and teachers and relatives. And Lord Krishna is telling him, no, it's actually dharma, it's actually religious to do this. You should do this. This is your duty to do this because you're in a righteous fight. So that's a very famous example of this. We continue on to first Vilasa chapter, text 110. We also get from the Padma Purana something where the Supreme Lord himself says, if sinful activities are committed for my sake, they become pious deeds. And if pious deeds are performed while neglecting me, they become sinful activities. So the Lord himself orders this. He says, if I'm pleased, even if what you're doing seems to be a sin, then I'm pleased, right? But then it becomes a pious activity. If you think you're doing something pious, but actually you're neglecting me, or you're going against my command, then it's actually a sinful activity.
Of course, what that brings to mind for me is Maharaj Yudhisthira. Yeah, told him to lie, but he decided to.
Yeah, of course. In the Mahabharata, there's a famous story that Krishna told Yudhisthira. Yudhisthira, by the way, is the son of Yamaraja, so the Lord of Rules. So he's supposed to be incarnation of rules, and Lord Krishna told him to break a rule. In fact, in the Battle of Kurukshetra, there were many rules of normal fighting, many etiquettes that they broke. They broke a lot of etiquettes. There was Krishna also expanded his hair and made the sun go away so that it was the end of the day, so that they could kill Jayadratha. So there were different things that he said. So what was that? That was also got to do with Jayadratha. I'm not sure. So Yudhisthira was told to lie, and he was told by Krishna to lie. He couldn't quite lie. So he said, Krishna wanted him to say that Ashwatthama is dead, but there was an elephant called Ashwatthama too. So he said, Ashwatthama is dead, be he man or elephant, I don't know. So he sort of fudged the truth a little bit. And in order to get somebody to be despondent about their son's death, and so show some weakness in which they could be killed. So it was to lie in order to trick somebody into being killed. So here we have in verse 111, so there are many examples, I think. There's probably a lot of examples of this where serving the Lord and pleasing the Lord is the main thing. And the other etiquettes can fall by the wayside if we simply please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here in the Skanda Purana, there's a conversation between Brahma and Narada, and he says, a person who gives up the worship of Sri Krishna and engages in the worship of a demigod is compared to a person who gives up his mother and takes shelter of a woman from a dog eater's family. Okay, so this is sort of very casteist sort of thing to say, but why would you give up your mother for another mother? Even here it said a mother from a low caste. It's not a good thing. So why give up the worship of Krishna? Worship of Krishna is the best, to go worship some lowly demigod, some lowly devata. And elsewhere in the Skanda Purana also. Skanda Purana is a very big Purana. We should always be a little bit careful when quoting Skanda Purana, because in South India, some people consider that to be a bit of a joke, quoting Skanda Purana, because it's so big. Many people make up quotations from it. And we to check out if there's actually this verse in Skanda Purana would take a long time. Probably easier now that we have computers, but still. Skanda Purana has many interpolations, and it's a very, very long text. I think 4 times the size of the Bhagavatam, so maybe 64,000 verses. So anyway, Vasudeva Parityaja. Vasudevam Parityaja. Parityaja means, right, giving up. A person who gives up the worship of Vasudeva Sri Krishna and engages in the worship of a demigod certainly gives up nectar and drinks poison. And the poison here, Visham means poison, but hala hala is actually the worst poison imaginable. Hala hala is the poison, just like we had yesterday was Vaikuntha Ekadasi. That's the day that the ocean of milk was churned. Also, Bhagavad Gita was spoken. What came out of the ocean of milk before the Amrita, before the nectar of immortality came out, a poison came out called hala hala, and Lord Shiva drank that poison and kept it within his throat, and his throat turned blue. So he's called Nilakanta. So this hala hala is mentioned here. Hala hala. Hala hala visha. It's the poison of hala hala. So it's so bad. It's the worst poison imaginable, right? Just like if you imagine, sometimes they rank the poison of snakes, and they'll say that cobra has so much poison, is very deadly. But there's another snake which is 100 times more deadly than a cobra, right? There's a snake in Australia they call the taipan, and it's supposed to be 100 times more deadly than a cobra. I don't really understand what the scale is, because a cobra bites you, you die, and this other one bites you, you die. I guess 100 times greater death. I don't know. Dying is dying to me, but anyway. So I'm not exactly sure how they do this, but they say there are different levels of poison. So here we have mentioned the hala hala, which is the greatest poison that there is. It's the most potent poison. So that's been mentioned here. So that's the most potent poison, is to give up the worship of Krishna and to worship somebody else, some demigod or some devata or even some human beings. To worship somebody else instead of worshiping Krishna, the greatest poison. That's considered to be the greatest poison. Giving up nectar, and nectar meaning, what does it say nectar here? Amritam. Amritam means what? Mrita means death. Amrita means something that you would drink that would give you life, even if you're dead. Something that's so good that if you took it, even though you were dead, you would come back to life. That is called Amrita, the nectar of immortality. Giving up the nectar of immortality and taking the worst poison known to man, right? That's what they're talking about in this sloka. It's very, 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 very tough point being made here. Very, very important point. Okay, so continuing on from the Mahabharata, it says, one who out of illusion gives up the worship of Lord Vishnu and worships someone else is compared to a person who abandons a pile of gold and accepts a mound of ashes. Who would do such a thing, right? One who disregards Lord Vishnu and takes shelter of a demigod is compared to a thirsty person who rejects Ganges water and runs after a mirage in the desert. A mirage is not even water. It's not even a drop of water in a mirage. And would reject the best water. The best water is the Ganges water. Also in the Pancharatra it's stated, a sinful person who out of illusion considers Lord Vishnu to be equal to insignificant demigods is an outcast. He's actually worse than an outcast, right? So this is also stated there. Oftentimes we hear about different offenses in chanting the holy name. One of the offenses is to think that Lord Vishnu and other devatas are the same. You think the name of Lord Vishnu is the same as the name of other devatas, other demigods. So thinking Vishnu in any way is equal to, and or what to speak of inferior than other devatas, other gods, other persons in high position. This is such a bad thing that one becomes an outcast. He loses all his caste. He loses anything that you can say good about a person. If a person might be good in so many ways, but if they think Lord Vishnu is equal to or less than some other devata, they're actually an outcast. Continuing on from the Vaishnava Tantra, text 116 from the Vaishnava Tantra, taken from the Vaishnava Tantra, it says, materialistic smartas. And who are smartas? Smartas are those people who follow Shmriti, remember? We have those other Shmritis which were given above, Manusmriti, Vishnu Shmriti. So there are some things in Shmritis which deal with the Varnashram society, right? Who consider Vishnu to be equal to the demigods, can never obtain unalloyed devotional service to Lord Hari, even though they be great yogis. So people might be great yogis, but if they don't understand that the Supreme Lord Hari is greater than all these other mere devatas or demigods, what to speak of other personalities, then they're considered to be like materialistic smartas, and they cannot get the goal of the worship of Hari, the goal of worshiping the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or serving Him, is unalloyed devotional service, is eternal, perfected service to the Lord. That is actually the goal, and that is what Vaishnavas think of as moksha or liberation, is the chance to serve the Supreme Lord eternally. So continuing on in another place, we're not quite sure where this particular statement comes from, what scripture, but it says, a person who considers demigods like Brahma and Shiva to be on an equal level with Lord Narayana is considered to be an offender and an atheist, right? So this is pasandi. The word pasandi is given here in the last line. Pasandi means an offender. And it says here, Brahma Rudradi. Adi, the word Adi can mean etc. So Brahma, Rudra, Indra, Agni, any of these devatas, if they're considered to be, and it's in plural here, devataihi. So Samatvena. Samatvena means to be on an equal level. If you think that any of these devatas is on an equal level to Lord Narayana, and this is the smarta system. The smarta system, and also preached by Adi Shankaracharya of Advaita, they see all the devatas as being equal expressions of the one impersonal Brahman, great spiritual energy. But Vaishnavas, we don't see that. Because why? Because Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita specifically says, Brahmano hi pratisthanam. Brahmano hi pratisthanam. He means, emphatically he says, I am the source of Brahman. I am the source of Brahman. Brahman is not the source of Krishna. Krishna is the source of Brahman. Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita. So these people have it wrong, the smartest, materialistic smartest, where they think that the Brahman is the source of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Rudra, Indra, Durga, Ganesh, all these, Surya, everything is coming from Brahman. No. Krishna is the source of Brahman. The effulgence of Krishna is Brahman. So, continuing on, verse 118, there are many prayers and holy names, all sorts of devatas, that reveal there are many prayers and holy names that reveal the glories of the Supreme Lord. That's true. Lord Vishnu is worshipped by persons in the mode of goodness, and such persons do not worship the demigods. Sahasranama Stotra Dau. Beginning with the 1,000 names, right? Slokal Santi Chedrishaha. Visheshata Sattvanishtahi, Sevyo Vishnu, not aparaha. They worship Lord Vishnu and not others. So, continuing on from Harivamsa. Harivamsa is an appendix of Mahabharata, which talks about all the different incarnations of the Lord. Tatacha Harivamse Shiva Vakyam. Okay, so Shiva speaking in the Harivamsa says, O Brahmanas, in the mode of pure goodness, please continuously worship Lord Krishna, always chant the mantras of Lord Krishna, and engage your minds in meditating on Lord Krishna. Hari Eva Sada, always, Eva only. Eva means only, Sada means always. Aradhyo, worship. Harihi, Lord Hari. Right? And always, Sada, again, chant the Vishnu mantras. Yes? And always meditate, Yatva, on Keshava. Krishna. Continuing on, O Brahmanas, you all are knowers of the Vedas and are situated in the mode of goodness. Therefore, you should always worship Sri Hari, study the Vedas, and meditate on Lord Keshava. If I go on collecting glorious statements from the Shastras, from the scriptures, that are pleasing to the ears, this book will become too voluminous. So, from now on, I will only write about the most essential subjects. So, this section, Gopal Bhatta started writing, and he started quoting about the glories of the Lord, and he said, look, there's so many of these things, there's so many of these slokas that speak about the glories of the Lord over and above all devatas, above all living entities, other living beings. If I go on quoting all these things, the book will become expanded. This Hari Bhakti Vilasa is going to become expanded to too big. So now I'm just going to calm down and I'm going to only write about more essential topics. So now he's going to introduce a new topic. And the new topic is, right, with verse 121 of first Vilasa of Hari Bhakti Vilasa. Ata Shri Vaishnava Mantra Mahatmyam, the glories of Vishnu mantras. Glories of Vishnu mantras. So in the Agamas, it said, because now what happened was we talked about the Guru, finding the Guru and disciple testing each other, mutual testing, service to the Guru by the student, which is essential, right? Not only asking questions, but service, right? Then we talked about finally, at a certain point, the student is going to approach the Guru and make a prayer to him, please initiate me, save me from repeated birth and death. And now we're going to explain the glories. We've explained a little bit about the glories of the Lord. Now, what are the glories of the mantras which have to do with Vishnu or have to do with Krishna or different Vaishnava mantras? So here we are. In the Agamas, it says, after receiving the mercy of the spiritual master in the form of pleasing him by chanting mantras of Lord Vishnu, a devotee attains all opulence and ultimately achieves the goal of life. So there are different goals of life, dharma, artha, kama, and ultimately moksha. So you would achieve moksha by chanting the mantras, by pleasing him. You please the spiritual master by chanting these mantras of Vishnu. And this is stated in the Agama Shastra. So obviously, you have to get those mantras first from the Guru, and then you have to chant them. And this will please the spiritual master. You will attain all opulence, which means all spiritual and all material opulence. And ultimately, you will achieve all the goals of life, including moksha, liberation, which is eternal service to the Lord, to Lord Vishnu. So continuing on, it says, only those who have acted piously and who have performed austerities for many thousands of years are able to chant mantras of Lord Vishnu and thus become qualified to purify the entire world. That's nice. So after many births and deaths, one who actually knows who I am, right? Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Samahatma Sadula Baha. He says, that such a person is very rare. So this is a rare person who gets the chance after many, many millions of births to be initiated and get a mantra of Lord Vishnu, and therefore, and is thus qualified to purify the whole world. Now in Vishnu Purana, it's stated, whoever a devotee happens to see or touch with his feet while sincerely chanting the mantras of Lord Vishnu will immediately become free from all types of fear. So even if you're chanting a Vishnu mantra like this and you touch someone with your feet, or if you see a person like that, you can free them from all types of fear by chanting the holy name, by chanting the holy mantras of Lord Vishnu, of Lord Krishna. In order to give greater importance to the 8-syllable Gopal mantra, I shall now describe the glories of mantras pertaining to the incarnations of the Supreme Lord. And that's interesting, because if we look Vishnu Mantranam, Likyate, Vishnu Mantranam Mahimat Visheshatata, Gopal Mantra Mahatmyam Pushtaye. Okay, so I don't know where it mentions 8-syllable Gopal mantra. Why don't we look at the Digdarshini Tika, chapter 1, 124. Let's see if there's anything in the Tika that speaks about an 8-syllable Gopal mantra, because I don't know what it is. 104, 124, 124. Oh. Oh, okay. Interesting. So in the this is very interesting. It says, Ayamartaha Sri Gopala Devoyam Avatari Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. This is 8 syllables. I'm guessing that this is what is meant by the Srimad Gopala Devasya Sammohan Nakya Astadasakshara Mantra Puja Vidireva. So it talks about in the purport, in the Digdarshan Tika by Sanatana Goswami, it talks about the 18-syllable mantra, but then it also talks about it talks about 8 syllables which speak about Gopal. Gopal Devo Yam Avatari Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. 8 syllables. So from Bhagavatam 1.3.28. This is a very famous verse. Interesting. So I'm not exactly sure why the translator here has said 8-syllable Gopal mantra, whether that is actually a mantra, Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. Maybe that's used by some people as a mantra. Okay, so continuing on, we're not quite sure about exactly what the 8-syllable Gopal mantra is. Maybe there's another 8-syllable Gopal mantra, but here in the purport, they seem to be saying Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam is 8 syllables pertaining to Gopal. Okay, so now we have texts 125 to 127, the glories of the 12-syllable and 18-syllable mantras. The 12-syllable mantra is usually Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and the 18-syllable mantra is the Gopal mantra, Lim Krishnaya Govindaya Gopijana Vallabhaya Swaha. So in the Padma Purana, the conversation between Devaduta and Vikundala, it is stated here, those who chant the 12-syllable and 18-syllable mantras while performing the rituals that are related to them, such as the Mudra, Anganyasa, Rishi, Chanda, and Devata, which would mean the mantra nyasa for these mantras, initiation, meditation, and forming a yantra are certainly the best of human beings. So there's a list of rituals that are given here to be, for which you should use the 12-syllable Vishnu Vasudeva mantra and the 18-syllable Gopal mantra for. Even the killer of a Brahmin becomes purified by seeing such persons because they are as good as Lord Vishnu. So if you chant this, you become qualitatively, although not quantitatively, but qualitatively equal to the Supreme Lord. And those persons that see you, if you chant this, they also become completely purified. So these are if we look here, it says samudram with mudra, sanyasam with nyasa, sa rishi chanda devata, right? Sa diksha vidi, sa dhyanam, sa yantram, dvarasaksharam, right? Astaksharam. Well, here it says astaksharam. That's interesting. Because here down below, it says 18 syllable. Down below it says here 18 syllable, but up here in the Sanskrit it says 8 syllable. So again, if we just have a look at the Sanskrit for the, what is this? The next verses. What is this? 25 to 27. 125 to 127. If we look, Astakshara, yeah. Yeah, it seems here, it doesn't look to me like it's actually mentioning the 18-syllable mantra at all in the Sanskrit. It's mentioning the 8-syllable mantra. So the two mantras being spoken about here are not, there is no indication of the 18-syllable mantra here. It's the 12-syllable mantra and the 8-syllable mantra. The 12-syllable mantra again, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and the 8-syllable mantra, Om Namo Narayanaaya. These are the mantras which are being spoken of here, and not the 18-syllable mantra, as given wrongly in the translation by the translator here, Astakshara. In the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the great sage Narada tells Dhruva Maharaja about he initiates him into the 12-syllable mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the verse here is Srimad Bhagavatam 4.8.53. O son of the king. Dhruva was the son of king, so he was a prince. So Narada Muni says, now I will speak unto you the mantra which is to be chanted with this process of meditation. One who carefully chants this mantra for 7 nights can see the perfect human beings flying, siddhas, flying in the sky. Saptaratram. Okay. So then later in Vishnu Purana, it says, planets like the sun and moon wander throughout this material world again and again, but those who meditate on the 12-syllable mantra never return after attaining the abode of Lord Vishnu. So again, this is another praise of the 12-syllable Vasudeva mantra. Astaksharasya yata Narada Pancharatra. In the Narada Pancharatra, it describes the 8-syllable mantra. It should be Om Namo Narayanaya. There's quite a few verses here. The 3 Vedas, the literature in pursuance of the Vedas, various kinds of chandas or poetic meters, and the predominating deities of various mantras are included in the 8-syllable mantra. The 8-syllable mantra, which is the essence of all Vedanta philosophy, and which is expert in delivering one from the ocean of material existence, is the ultimate goal of all human beings. Whatever the most fortunate person who attains perfection in chanting the Wherever the most fortunate person who attains perfection in chanting the 8-syllable mantra resides, no disease, famine, or thieves can enter. The demigods, demons, Gandharvas, Siddhas, Vidyadharas, and other followers of the demigods offer their respectful obeisances to that great soul who has mastered the chanting of the 8-syllable mantra. And it is stated in the Shastra that Lord Narayana, who personally appeared in the form of the 8-syllable mantra, which is being uttered repeatedly by the practitioners of devotional service. So Lord Narayana has personally appeared as the mantra Om Namo Narayanaya. In the Uttarakhanda, the last part of the Padma Purana, it's also stated, the 8-syllable mantra awards one religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. So dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Right? Was it say up here? Yeah. It takes away all of one's miseries. One gives one all kinds of opulence and is extremely auspicious. Later on in the Linga Purana, it said, what is the use of chanting many mantras? What is the use of observing many vows? Simply chant the mantra beginning with Namo Narayanaya. Namo Narayanayeti mantraha. Beginning with Namo Narayanaya, because this mantra fulfills all of one's desires. O best of Brahmanas, anyone who continuously chants this mantra will certainly go to the abode of Lord Vishnu, along with his dependents, along with his family and dependents, I guess. Sa Bandavaha, along with his friends. Bandava means friends. Okay. In the Bhavishya Purana, which speaks about the future, it also says, the 8-syllable Maha Mantra takes away all of one's sinful reactions. It is the foremost mantra and is glorified as the best amongst all Vishnu mantras. Astaksharo Mahamantraha Sarva Papa Hara Paraha Sarvesham Vishnu Mantranam Rajatve Parikirtitaha. Continuing on, conversation between Shukadev Goswami and Srila Vyasadeva, it's stated, oh my dear son, the mantra beginning with Namo Narayanaya awards all objectives of life. It awards the chanter residence in heaven and liberation. This mantra, which was personally revealed by Lord Vishnu, is the essence of all the Vedas. It was first spoken by Manu for the benefit of the devotees. It destroys all sinful reactions and fulfills all desires. So Lord Narayana, incarnated as the perfect guru and the perfect disciple, Narayana, and spoke this mantra Om Namo Narayana at Badrik Ashram in the Himalayas. Continuing on, verse 142, it is a fact that Narayanaya Namaha, Narayanaya Nama Iti, is the mantra for counteracting the formidable poison of material existence. O truthful and renounced disciples residing in this world, hear me with attention. I raise my hands and declare this to you boldly. Text 143. O my son and disciples, please hear this. I raise my arms and declare it boldly that there is nothing greater than the 8-syllable mantra. Okay, so these are all, we're not exactly sure where all these are coming from. Perhaps they're coming from some Purana which hasn't been stated here. We're not quite sure where these come from. Next, text 144 talks about the Kumuda Piranha. And the Kumuda Piranha says, whether you are lying down or standing, wherever you are, and whatever position you're in, just take shelter once of this mantra, Namo Narayanaya. Now we're coming to another set of mantras. Another set of mantras. So we talked about the 12-syllable mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We talked about the 8-syllable mantra, Om Namo Narayanaya. Now we're going to talk about another mantra, a 32-syllable mantra in glorification of Lord Narasimha. Ata Shri Narasimhanastuva Mantra Rajasya Mahatmyam Tapaniyam Shrutishu. So from the Shruti, from the Veda, from the Upanishad, the Narasimha Tapani Upanishad, the glories of Lord Narasimha Mantra, which is chanted in the Anustub meter, which is 4 lines of 8 syllables. 2 lines of 16 syllables, but anyway, 4 lines of 8 syllables normally seen. So, the demigods inquired from Brahma, "Oh Brahma, please tell us about the Narasimha Mantra, the Narasimha Mantra, which is the king of mantras and which is recited in the Anustub meter." Brahma said, "One who daily recites this Narasimha Mantra, which is the king of mantras, becomes as purified as the Adityas, Agni, Vayu, Surya, Chandra, Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra. Indeed, he becomes purified of all sinful reactions." And then at the end of that same Upanishad, the following passage is found. One Brahma is equal to, one Brahmana is equal to 100 non-Brahmanas. One householder is equal to 100 Brahmanas. One Vanaprastha is equal to 100 householders. One sannyasi is equal to 100 Vanaprasthas. One devotee of Shiva is equal to 100 sannyasis. One teacher of the Angiras branch of the Atharva Veda is equal to 100 devotees of Lord Shiva. One teacher of the Narasimha Mantra is equal to 100 teachers of the Angirasa branch of the Atharva Veda. A teacher of the Narasimha Mantra achieves the supreme destination where there is no distress, which is not illuminated by the sun, where the wind does not blow, where there is no need of the moon, where there are no stars, where fire does not burn, where there is no entry of death personified, and where there are no faults. In other words, Vaikuntha, where none of these things, material things, are there. That supreme abode is always blissful, eternal, peaceful, auspicious, worshipped by great personalities like Brahma, and the object of the yogi's meditation. When one attains the supreme abode, he never returns to the material world. This abode has been glorified by the mantras of the Rig Veda as follows. That is the supreme abode of Lord Vishnu. Liberated persons can directly see that eternal abode. And so what's that mentioned here is, right? Tad Vishno Paramam Padam Sada Pasyanti Surayaha Diviva Chaksuratatam Tad Vipraso Vipanyavo Jagrivagam Sasamindate Vishno Yat Paramam Padam. Right? So it's actually stated here in the Narasimha Tapani Upanishad. That verse from the Rig Veda is actually given there and explained that you will attain, after chanting this Anustup mantra, Ugram Veeram Mahavishnam Jwalantam Sarvatomukam Simham Bhishanam Bhadram Mrityum Namami Aham. You will attain that abode of Lord Vaikuntha, where the liberated persons can personally see the Lord.
So the Narasimha mantra was Ugram Viram, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anustup mantra. Yeah. Oh, we can look at we can even look in the why don't we look in the and see what it says about it. So what was it? I'm not sure if I actually see it in the commentary. I don't see it in the commentary, so it's just understood, I think. Maybe it'll come up. Maybe it'll come up later. Yeah, I don't see it. It may be directly mentioned later, but it's not. It's not mentioned. We shouldn't probably expect that that they're going to mention the mantras directly, because they're Diksha mantras. So maybe they won't be mentioned directly.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although later on they're going to explain nyasas mantra nyas and everything like that. So they will mention the mantras sometimes. Maybe not in the direct slokas, but in the commentary by Sanatana Goswami, I'm sure they'll be mentioned. Okay, so we finished off all about the guru, and we got up to the point of the student asking for initiation. Now we're considering the mantras, which mantras the guru is going to initiate the student with. So we're considering the glories of different mantras, and so we're starting off with Narayana mantras, then we're going to Narasimha mantras, then we're going to Rama mantras, and finally we're going to come to Krishna mantras. So it seems like if I, we can't say for sure, but it does look to me like Gopal Bhatta considers Narayana mantras, and then even greater than that, Narasimha mantras, even greater than that, Rama mantras, even greater than that, Krishna mantras. It seems like he's giving that. Although each one is being stated as being the greatest mantra, and being a great mantra, still he's giving it in a certain order. He wants to build up to the Gopal mantra, the 18-syllable Gopal mantra, as being the best.
Okay.
Because naturally the text is mostly for Gaudiya Vaishnavas.
Yeah.
But he's putting out there that there are all these other mantras. They're also great mantras. They're also perfect mantras. They're also fantastic mantras for of the mantras of Lord Narayana and Lord Vishnu and Krishna and Rama and Narasimha. These are all good mantras for initiation. But still, at the end, he's going to concentrate mostly in Hari Bhakti Vilasa on the Gopal mantra.